Now, with exclusive reaction to Biden's first press conference is former President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Joe Biden is brazenly stonewalling, as you could see in that press conference, requests for access to these facilities. And as you heard, he has no idea when access will be granted. What's going on here, and would you get away with this?
No, I wouldn't. And we had the border the most secure, they say, in 20 years. But really, I think from the beginning, it's never been like this. We built almost 500 miles of wall, and it was new wall. You know, they like to say renovation. The renovation was we knocked down the old wall and we built a new wall, and then they call it a renovation. But this was new wall and incredible wall that was, you know, really did a job. In addition to that, Mexico worked great with us. We had a tremendous relationship, and me with the president, who's a tremendous person. And they gave us 28,000 soldiers along our border, and they stopped people from coming in. And what you're doing now and what you're seeing now is inhumane. These children and people are a tremendous number of children, by the way, but they're living on top of each other in squalor. This is squalor. That's why they won't allow the press to come in. We let the press go in, and we had much smaller numbers, frankly, because people couldn't come up. But we let the press come in, but they're living in very dangerous conditions. There's no testing for COVID-19, as we call it sometimes. Sometimes we call it something else. But there's no testing. There's no nothing. And what's going on is just absolutely insane. It's a horrible situation. And everyone that's seen it, nobody's seen worse. Nobody's seen anything like it. And if you get cameras inside some of those facilities, you would see children on top of children, and you'd see filth, and you'd see things that you would not believe possible.
Well, I want to move on to a claim that Biden made about your administration's treatment of the migrant children. Watch.
If an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let them death and stay on the other side. No previous administration did that either, except Trump. I'm not going to do it.
He was accusing you of starving people who were wanting to come across the Rio Grande or the border to the United States. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, it's just the opposite. But by the time we finished what we were doing, very few people were coming up because they knew they weren't going to get through. We stopped catch and release, which was a disaster. That's where you catch somebody, take their name, and release them into our country. We stopped that. They were supposed to come back years later and go to court, but nobody ever comes back and goes to court. And the very biggest thing was we had the stay in Mexico policy, and that means that we wouldn't allow people to wait in our country until they were totally checked out, which most of them didn't get checked out, and they would go back to their own country. If young kids were with parents, but a lot of times they weren't, and we would take care of them. But it is what they're doing now is outrageous, and they should finish the wall. If they finish the wall, they'd be able to have a lot of people are right now staying in the few openings. We have openings in the wall that were going to be closed up, could have been done over the next month. If it weren't for the fact that we got sued 11 times, many of the suits by Congress and people in Congress and Democrats, we would have had the wall. It was almost completed, but it took 2.5 years to get the final sign-offs from the court victories that we had. We had great court victories, but they sued us for 2.5 years, and they were suing us on the financing, on the environment, on lots of things. We won the lawsuits, and we built almost 500 miles. They should immediately seal it up and finish it up, and you would see a lot of good things happen. But nobody knows exactly what they're doing.
Mr. President, what was your just general reaction to the way Biden handled the so-called press conference today? You know, he read quite a bit from reference notes, but he did take some questions. It was unusual, to say the least.
Well, they were strange questions, and they were asked in a very interesting way. It was like softballs, like you're throwing softballs up, and it's just a different world. Nobody's seen anything like it. You know it. You know it better than anybody. You cover it so well, and it's very sad to watch. Actually, they're feeding him questions. They're easy questions. I noticed Peter Doocy didn't get to ask a question today, and there could be no difficult questions. And they're ready to rip the microphone away if somebody did get a little bit testy. He just, look, the whole thing is ridiculous. You know it, and so do I.
Well, where was there Jim Acosta?
And so do
Mr. President, where was there Jim Acosta? I mean, they'd have Acosta like in your face every day, and others like him.
They don't have that, yeah. And if Jim Acosta were there, he'd ask very soft questions. It would be a whole different thing.
The Democrats are also, the Democrats are also saying that a problem here is that apparently America is not sending enough U.S. taxpayer dollars to Central America to solve or alleviate this border crisis. Here was Nancy Pelosi today.
The then president, had withdrawn the money that was allocated for the Northern Triangle. That was a mistake, and we have to restore that. They withdrew the money to punish those countries.
Mr. President, did you withdraw money from Central America to punish them?
Absolutely, that's right. On that, I agree with her. First time in a long time, years, that I've agreed with her. We were paying them $500 million a year. Nobody knew what they were doing with the money, and they were sending criminals to our country. When they're sending people in the caravans, as we call them, they're not exactly their finest, okay? And more importantly, perhaps, is that they wouldn't take it as we would, because ICE was incredible, the job they did, and Border Patrol, incredible. These are incredible men and women. When we got somebody, we captured a bad MS-13 or group, we'd bring them back to the country, and they wouldn't take them. And I said, what are we doing? How much money do we give them? We pay them $500 million a year. I said, stop paying the money immediately. We stopped paying. They called the following day. They said, we'd love to have MS-13 come back into our country. Please send them immediately, and we will not be sending any more bad people. And we then got along very well with them. So she's absolutely right. They abused us in so many different ways. They wouldn't take prisoners and murderers back, and we didn't want them in our country. So we'd bring them back. They wouldn't take them. I stopped paying the $500 million that we were wasting on giving it to them. As soon as I did that, they immediately agreed to take back everybody. They said it would be a great honor to take them back. Please send them immediately.
Yeah. Mr. President, today NBC News reporting that the DHS, of course, it was created after 9/11 to protect America from international terrorism. Now, they're moving toward what intel officials are now saying is the new top threat, domestic violent extremism. That includes apparently surveilling social media. Here's what they mean. There's a quote from the article. The idea is to identify people who may, through their social media behavior, be prone to influence by toxic messaging spread by foreign governments, terrorists, and domestic extremists. Mr. President, their DHS is going after people who may be your supporters, who they believe are domestic extremists because they say things like, let's take back our government. Are you concerned about that?
What I'm concerned about is Antifa and BLM and some of the horrible things that we witnessed over the last, frankly, long period of time, when they take over Portland and they take over the courthouse and they destroy the building. You have to see what they've done